And I have tons to get to today. We want you to know, though, that the Randy Karraker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley is presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Good morning. Good, happy Friday. How you doing?
Happy Friday.
Happy Monday?
I was like, wait a minute. I got
Monday?
scared for a second. Is it Friday, Monday?
Darn. I wish it was
You were already
Friday.
trying to jump ahead to the end of the week, aren't you?
Yeah. This week is going so slow for me.
It just started. It just started. Are you the type of person that says that the week starts on Sunday or it starts on Monday?
The week starts on Sunday.
There's a lot of people, though, who say it starts on Monday.
Well, the work week starts on Monday.
I think for a lot of people, it starts on Monday. But for me, the new week starts on Sunday.
But in religion, on the seventh day, he rested, and that was Sunday, right?
Oh, I see.
There we go.
And then you get back to your work week.
You're surprised I knew that, aren't you?
You're a little religious.
Oh yeah,
Just a little bit.
I'm getting ready for Friday. Yeah.
Oh, it's your favorite time of year.
It really is.
The greatest comeback of all time.
Greatest comebacks of all time. Should we get a 1 pound Reese's bunny or egg?
Oh, no. I don't want to see you go into a sugar coma, Randy. I don't want to see it.
We won't.
I can't imagine that your doctors would be too thrilled if we did that either.
Probably not, but it has happened before.
It has.
So we've got a thing to show you on Friday. I'll find a thing on Friday. It's pretty funny. The Cardinals take on the Houston Astros. Wilson isn't it? He's wearing his Astros sweater today. One of our guys here at Sports Hub STL. Framber Valdez will go against Sonny Gray after the Cardinals took 2 of 3 against the Phillies. I was very impressed, not just with the fact that the Cardinals won the game, but with how they won the games. Mm-hmm. Brooke, Friday, Palante, 7 shutout, 2-hit innings, 2-0 win. Saturday, Miles Michaelis goes 5 innings, allows 3 runs and a 4-1 loss. And then yesterday, we were talking last week about how one of the things they want to get out of Matthew Liberatore is get rid of that disaster inning. Well, yesterday, he goes 6 shutout, 3-hit innings in a 7-0 route. And I loved what I saw out of Matthew Liberatore yesterday.
I did. And so for all the people who said, put him in the bullpen, I understand that the bullpen we've seen recently has had some struggles, but honestly, Matthew Liberatore deserves a shot. And I think it's one of the best things that the Cardinals did going into the season is giving him a fair shot, because we've talked about that, where he's kind of been jerked around, especially last season, where it wasn't exactly a defined role. And what have we said in the past that really bothered us with players is that they didn't have defined roles. It was almost like a role that could be given to you and quickly taken away with just one mistake. And I really like that this season they said no with Matthew Liberatore. He deserves it. He worked on being a starter this offseason. He came in, proved himself during spring training. We like what we see. We're giving him a fair shot in the starting rotation. We're not going to just take this job away from him in a whim. And I like that they stuck with that and gave him a fair shot, and where he's not being pushed back and forth from the bullpen.
In fact, Brooke, I reached the point. Tell me if you agree. The Cardinals are scheduled to go to the 6-man rotation on Wednesday with Steven Matz getting the start. I don't think I would go to the 6-man rotation now.
I still don't feel great about that. I think that could actually be more hurtful than helpful. And I know that they have a lot of statistics, data, all that different stuff that tells them probably otherwise. So I'm not trying to question them completely on that. But at the same time, I think that Matthew Liberatore has deserved this shot. I want to give these younger players runway, ding, 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 into the starting rotation. And Matthew Liberatore deserves that shot. And Steven Matz, honestly, don't we know who he is at this point?
Yeah. And he might be better in the bullpen.
Might be.
Yeah.
If you want to keep him healthy, because what is it every single season that you deal with Steven Matz?
Injuries?
Inevitable. It's inevitable that he's going to be injured. Why not keep him in the bullpen? I feel like if you want to get the most longevity out of him for the rest of the season, the bullpen would be the best shot.
And by the way, you can give me all the stats and analytics and data that you want about the value of a 6-man rotation. I'll come back with this stats and analytics and data, okay? Tell me about the world champion that had a 6-man starting rotation once in 150 years of baseball. Tell me the one, and I'll assume there's 100.
Yes, Rocchio.
Isn't that a little unfair considering people don't use 5-man rotations in the playoffs?
Well, even during the regular season, is there one team that has been a 6? There hasn't had a 6-man rotation during the season and then wound up going to the World Series and winning it.
There was a long time there where a jump shooting team had never won an NBA championship.
So you think things are changing? So we used to have 4-man rotations back in my day.
That's my thing. Yeah, I think things are changing.
I think it's stupid.
That's perfectly reasonable argument.
Yeah.
What are we, Japan?
Here's the thing.
We're going to go to 6-man rotations?
She's defending herself here. But no, I just think having pitchers pitch one day a week, I even get going to a 5-man rotation. But having pitchers, if you're playing 6 games a week and have a pitcher pitch once a week, I don't know how they're going to be at their athletic best.
I don't mind the 5-man rotation because of how hard guys are throwing now. You need that 5-man rotation. And maybe we are getting to the point, Rocchio, because of how hard guys throw and how many injuries that we're seeing. I mean, Tommy John surgery is inevitable for every single pitcher, it seems like at this point, especially with guys who throw hard, that we will get to a 6-man rotation. I'm fine with a 5-man rotation, though.
I guess I just need a little bit more clarification on why the hard line between 5 and 6, but you're admitting a very thin line between 4 and 5.
Because wouldn't you say most pitchers are used to the 5-man rotation?
And that's true, but he's saying that the switch from 4 to 5 made sense. But the switch to 5 to 6 doesn't.
I'm saying that back in my day, I would much prefer.
Then why did the switch to 5 happen? And when did it happen? And how gradual was it? And what was the reaction?
Well, it goes back to the stress that was put on an arm by. It used to be that you threw 2 pitches. You either threw a fastball and a curve or a fastball and a slider.
Yeah.
Now you've got, and especially the split finger. Yeah, the split finger causes a lot of stress on the arm. And I'll grant you that so does throwing 150 miles an hour causes stress on the arm. But at some point, it's not like these are football players. What are you going to do? If you have 5 days between starts, what are you going to do to make yourself better? Right. Mm-hmm. And I think it's all right. I think right now they're fine from a physical standpoint. And we still haven't seen anybody do it on a regular basis.
What if and I'm not saying this is the theory, because we're getting comments now from people about how the bullpen's going to be stressed. What if the entire point then is, with 5 days between starts instead of 4, you now can more confidently pitch into 100 pitches into the 7th inning, because now you have an extra day and we're completely reworking your recovery routine and getting an extra day into that recovery routine with all the things we have now, hyperbaric chambers, cold tubs, hot tubs, so on and so forth. We actually can be confident that we can get pitchers to a 90 to 100 pitch threshold and then not tax the bullpen that way.
I wonder how the agents would feel about that. Having their pitchers go over 100 on a regular basis.
They would not like that.
Not even on a regular basis, but not having to pull the trigger at 81 pitches like they did with Fetty. Being able to say we can go to 90.
Well,
because that's one more inning. And the difference between 5 1/3 and 6 1/3, the difference between 6 and 7, that's a huge difference. It's what we've been talking about for the last God knows how many years in baseball.
They're still building these guys up in April. Once we get into mid-May, a month from now, those pitchers will be throwing 100. And I hate the fact that the Cardinals do kind of limit their guys to 100. Remember how much Jordan Montgomery hated that?
He hated it a lot.
He hated it. And there's just some old school guys that prefer to be trusted going beyond 100 pitches. But then you have
the newer school guys who don't want to go anywhere near 100 pitches. Right, that they're used to that.
Logan Gilbert, when he had the no-hitter, couldn't believe he was in the game.
Exactly. You also, in the minor leagues, they're not building players up to 100 pitches, I feel like, anymore.
Well, and when Nolan Ryan was in charge of the Rangers when they played the Cardinals in the World Series that season, he had tried to build pitchers up to do what he had done and throw pitches and go 7 innings. And the blowback from agents was severe. And it's actually one of the reasons that Nolan Ryan wound up losing his job there.
Yeah, because it's just something that you're not seeing as much anymore. And with the 6-man, I think what concerns me, I guess, because we know that especially with starting pitchers, they're creatures of habit. Anything that throws off their routine, even just by a little bit, always concerns me. Does that concern you about going to the 6-man rotation with the Cardinals this week?
Sonny Gray would not fare well with a 6-man rotation.
Because he needs every single thing to kind of, he has his little things that he has to do. And I just worry about the routines being thrown off.
There was a situation last year, and I'm not sure the teams, I think it was Milwaukee and Atlanta. And they got rained out against Milwaukee, and then he got drilled. Whatever he pitched the next day against a different team and got drilled. And he was asked afterwards, I think John Denton said, "Hey, did you get thrown off because you are such a creature of habit, and your preparation had been for one team and you didn't have time to prepare for another. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I remember, I've told this story before. I don't know if you've heard it, but back in the day when Bernie and I were doing a show at 1380, we had Dave Duncan on the show, and Jaime Garcia was a Cardinal starter at the time. And we asked why Garcia had struggled in his last start. The team was in Milwaukee. And Dunk told us, he said, well, Jaime's breakfast order, his room service order for breakfast was incorrect, and it threw off his whole day.
But seriously,
that really happened.
That's how it goes for starting pitchers. And just going back to Matthew Liberatore for 1 minute, because John Ditton has a story out on MLB.com about this right now. Something that shifted in his mindset this season, Matthew Liberatore, is that he actually plays ping pong right before his starts. So he said that in his head, he was making it too big of a deal of where he had to have this certain routine for days that he was starting, and it was becoming too big in his head. So now he just plays a little bit of ping pong, relaxes right before his start days.
I think that's smart. I think sometimes people try to take on the persona of a different starter. And like Bob Gibson would never talk to anybody on game day. Chris Carpenter would never talk to anybody on game day. But sometimes, like the Cardinals had a guy that finished second in the Cy Young voting in the early 90s, Bob Tewksbury. And you'd walk into the clubhouse where on the day he was pitching, and he'd walk up and say, hey, Randy, what's going on? He was just as normal as could be. He was even more effusive and outgoing on days that he pitched.
Yeah.
And that's probably what you're talking about with a guy like Liberatore. He just needs to live his own personality rather than somebody else's.
So Matthew Liberatore said, I think ping pong is a big part of where the routines and processes have come up big for me, because something I struggled with in my first 2 years was how I should act on start days. So now he says that it just kind of is something that relaxes him, is that he's not making this huge deal in his head of it being a start day, what he shouldn't be doing. He's just relaxing, playing some ping pong right before. And a little behind the scenes too, for people who aren't aware, you can't even talk to the pitchers, obviously, on start days. If a pitcher's starting media wise, because we always get access pregame, you can't speak to a starter on their start days.
Right. And some of them, like I said, with a guy like Tewksbury, occasionally it was weird with Waino, because Adam wouldn't come on with us in the morning. And maybe it was because he wanted to sleep in. But when we were on the radio working with Adam Wainwright, he wouldn't come on with us. But then sometimes I'd be in the clubhouse and he'd come up and talk. So some guys are less predictable.
Kyle Gibson, he would speak to us on start days.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter to him. And he would talk right before a game, but he just loves to talk.
Yeah, he does.
We got to find out we got to call him.
He has a podcast now.
We got to get him on to promote his podcast, and he can promote ours.
Exactly. I think he's still doing stuff with Big League Impact too. But Kyle Gibson, he is a great personality. Really funny guy.
Okay, so a great weekend for the Cardinals. They win 2 out of 3. Jordan Walker hit a home run yesterday. That was great to see. Wilson Contreras hit a home run. He's 4 for 8 since he got the day off on Friday. And the only negative to the series really was Mason Winn leaving Friday night's game with back spasms and being placed on the 10-day IL on Saturday. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. He'll be back next Tuesday.
He should be.
Most important Cardinal? Mason Winn?
Most important Cardinal of this team currently now? I think so. Well, I don't know if you could say the most important. If you're saying because there's not much of a backup option.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why. Because there's not much of a backup option for him. And you had to have that weird circumstance too, where Pages was at second base.
Most important position player.
You're going with Helsley?
I would argue that Gray or Helsley would be more important, just because, good Lord, what is this?
Yeah, if you don't have
either of those,
I think you can get by without Sonny Gray.
I disagree.
Shock.
I mean, I'm not surprised you say that.
But it's funny. I was talking to Ollie the other night and asked him, but the age old, well, it's not age old because it's only been a couple of years. But I asked him why, when you have the ghost runner at second, why not bunt a runner to third and on the road? Why not bunt a runner to third and get him to third with less than 2 outs and just get him over, get him home? And he said, I will do that if I have Helsley available. But if he doesn't have Helsley, and this makes sense, right? If you don't have Helsley available, then you got to be playing for more than one run. That tells you about their faith in the bullpen, but it also tells you about the faith that they have in Ryan Helsley being able to get a side 1, 2, 3.
I think that Helsley definitely, with him coming back, that he's
Mhm.
probably up there as one of the most important players. I think Jordan Walker is kind of rising to the top of that conversation of being one of the most important Cardinals for this team right now. What he's able to do, the power is still coming, of course, for him. And I know that he homered obviously yesterday, but still, we're seeing that power start to climb. But the strides he's made in right field and just
Mhm.
defensively, that's the stuff that has
He
impressed me
looks
the most.
really good. And I think long term in the future, I think if you ask me maybe in 3 months, that might be the case, depending on how he ascends with the offense. But I look at Winn and his offensive and defensive prowess, and the numbers say he's the best defensive shortstop in Major League Baseball. And then you add in the fact that the next guy is Sajasi, and his arm is in question, or Donovan. I don't think the Cardinals have another guy in their organization that's capable of even coming close to what Mason Winn does.
Yeah, Mason Winn provides a lot of value for your team. And so when you saw the back spasms, which is something that he's dealt with for a while now, that's what concerned me about Ciani making the cut in the first place, is because you didn't have a true backup option for Mason Winn.
Right.
That was my concern anyways. And then you run into that and it was scary, but luckily a lot of guys were able to step in.
And I was
in that
kind of
position.
surprised, Brooke, and I know they had to bring Gorman back, but I thought that if they were going to lose Mason Winn for any period of time, my thing was, okay, you've got Fermin and Barrero 4 hours away. I thought that they would bring up a guy, and maybe that was an opportunity to send Ciani down. I thought that they would bring up one of those guys who is legitimately a shortstop.
Yeah, especially even if it was late that they found out with Mason Winn going into the series, they still had time to make a move.
Right. When they did it on Saturday, yeah, they had.
I wonder why they didn't do that.
I think that it's all about observation. I think it goes back to the evaluation. I think they want to know what Thomas Sajasi is.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. And with Thomas Sajasi, he looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, he does.
I think that it's exciting to see that you have a young guy like that get opportunities. I'm glad that they're giving him an opportunity. Willson Contreras, by the way, you do need power from this team. And when you were talking about him able to break through this weekend, that's what we were waiting for. He is using a version of the torpedo bat now, by the way. And that might be making the difference. So the torpedo bats that are very controversial right now surrounding the Yankees and other teams and players are using them too, thinner at the end and wider in the barrel. On Saturday, he started using that bat, and it looks like it worked out for him. He apparently tried it out during spring training and didn't like it. Well, he likes it now.
It's good
Whatever it takes, because you need Willson Contreras to contribute.
And he's going to be
way.
Fine.
Derek Gould said he put in a shipment, an order for a new shipment of bats after yesterday's game. So, I mean, hey, if it's working for you.
If it's working, it's working.
Man, why not?
Okay, a couple of other things I want to get to. And Ellipsis 150, good questions. What happens if Herrera comes back, but Pozo continues to hit very well? Pozo's hitting .417, a homer, 2 doubles, .833 slug, and a 1250 OPS. That's but it's a nice problem to have if it is an issue, right? Because you can never have too many good players. So if Pozo is playing well, then you just have another player. It's another piece to the jigsaw puzzle that you're trying to put together.
Well, I mean, as long as Wynn's injured, you move Donnie over to shortstop and put Pages in at second base, and you can just that's how you finagle those at bats.
That's true. You always have that opportunity now. Yeah. Pages at second base is a stud. Best defensive second baseman in the history of the game, as far as I'm concerned. When you have a 1,000 percentage, you don't have a 1,020 fielding percentage. So tell me who's better than 1,000 fielding percentage in the history of the game.
I think they need to keep him there, honestly. You just need to keep him over at second base, new position. So then we move Willson Contreras from catcher to first base. Then you move Pages over to second base. Herrera, maybe eventually we put him in the outfield.
Yeah.
And you'll find a catcher.
And Ellipsis says, but then you'd have 3 catchers on your roster. That's not a bad thing because one of your catchers, Pozo, who's Babe Ruth, or Ivan Herrera, either one of those guys can be your designated hitter. And then if you lose your catcher to injury, you still have a catcher available.
Babe Ruth. The second coming of Babe Ruth.
Yeah, maybe we should go Johnny Bench.
Ghostface Gaming says they need to find a spot other than catcher when Herrera is back and keep Pages starting catcher. I'd like to have both of them in the lineup.
Yeah. And ultimately, they're going to have to make a decision, and it's going to have to involve, I think, Herrera changing positions. But I don't know what I don't know where you put him. No, but ultimately.
I still think that would be such a miss on the Cardinals organization. And you're not wrong, because maybe that's where he'll be best suited, is somewhere else other than catching. But I think that just goes to show you how far the development dropped off in the Cardinals organization leading up to this, because it felt like we didn't hear anything about this with his arm being such an issue until recently when he came up to the majors.
But his bat plays. And the other part of it for the Cardinals is they have more catching on the way. And Pozo probably isn't the guy with the 12. He's not going to have a 1250 career OPS. But you have Crooks on the way. You have Bernal on the way. You've got young catchers on the way. So at some point, you're going to say, well, why am I catching this guy who really can't catch?
Yeah.
Why not try to find a different position for him?
Ellipsis 150 says, if one of them is DH, though, what about Gorman, Burley, and Baker? Someone is going to be the odd man out. Baker.
Well, Baker's already an odd man out.
He is. And Baker's already getting the short end of the stick there.
The Cardinals hope at some point to trade Nolan Arenado and get Gorman in there at third. That would make
sense.
And that's one universal thing among front office and the on-field staff. One thing that's universal is that they're disappointed that they weren't able to move Arenado during the offseason, and they still hope at some point to do so.
Well, I mean, Mosaic did say that it was priority 1, 2, and 3 to move Nolan Arenado this offseason. So it's not a secret that was the plan, but it just didn't work out. They tried to move him. He didn't want to go over to the Astros. That seemed to be the only team that was creating buzz around him. So now he's here. But what if he doesn't want to go anywhere?
Well, see, that's an issue. And with the schedule the way it is for the Cardinals, nobody thought, well, I won't say nobody, because you may have thought that they would win 2 out of 3 against Philadelphia. But very few people thought that they would win 2 out of 3 against Philadelphia. And then it's Houston. Mm-hmm. And then is it the Mets and Braves, or Braves and Mets? Whatever it is. You've got the Braves and Mets coming up after this. And as it was described to me, that could lead, this upcoming schedule with the injuries could lead to some frustration on the part of Arenado, who might open up his thought process.
That's all that it would take to where he would say, all right.
Yeah, well, if you're out of it early, it could happen.
And he wants to go to a winning team.
Yeah. What did you think of Wilson Contreras' comments yesterday about the fans? And they were very nice. He just said, hey, we wish they were here with us. We want to, we're a fun team to watch. We have good players. What did you think?
I thought it was really interesting because we did see, I will say, that the attendance did creep back up. I think I was seeing it was around consistently all weekend around the 30,000.
It was good on Friday when I was there.
It looked like it's still just not to the standards of the Cardinals fandom. But I think that Wilson's comments are good. And he has a point where, hey, we just want people to come out and see us. It's about the players. It is about the players at the end of the day. Even if you're mad at John Mozeliak, even if you're mad at Ollie Marmol, it is about the players. But Wilson has also said things kind of against the organization in the past. So I don't know if he knows that he was kind of part of those comments and the consternation. And I know that fans are able to come up with their own thoughts on their own. But don't you remember in the past where he talked about, the development really, it has been bad. I'm glad they're finally doing something about it. Yeah, so he has been a part of those comments that have added to probably some of the negative thought process around this.
Yeah. Sunday rubber match against the Phillies, with good pitchers on the mound and the best weather in St. Louis in the calendar year so far, and you barely break 30. That's, I don't know if there's any, again, they're not freaking out. They were expecting this. You talked about they were projecting a loss of 900,000 fans.
A million, yeah.
To a million fans.
Over 3 years.
Over the last 3 years, including this season. So they're not surprised by this necessarily, but that to me was shocking. And the fact that people were like, oh, hey, they at least got 30. It's a rubber match against a very good team with great pitching matchups with the best weather we've had. That's a guaranteed 38-40 for the last 20 years.
But you have, over the course of the last 5 years, you've added a soccer team that had a game on the same day that provides competition that wasn't there for the Cardinals before. And you've also, on this particular day, got a very compelling Masters. Not that that made any difference, because I think the tickets for the Cardinals were already sold. But there might be people who decided, you know what, I'm going to stay home and watch the golf rather than head on down to the ballpark. And then you've got the other ancillary things that have happened. And bottom line is, with the performance of last year, 71 wins, 83 wins. We're in the show me state. And people, I think, want to know that the franchise is on an upward trajectory before they spend their money.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're talking about you have a great series win against the Phillies, but then what did you do prior to that?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have great performances.
No, it was a bad road trip.
It was a really bad road trip for the Cardinals. So what is this team exactly? And I think people, before they buy in with tickets and their time, they want to know what version of this Cardinals team is real.
But I have no problem at all with, of all people, I think Contreras is a guy who gets his energy from people being in the stands.
Yes.
And he wants people, because he thinks the team is good, may or may not be, but he thinks the team is good. He wants people to check the team out. So his comments didn't bother me one iota. As a matter of fact, I'm glad he said it.
No, I don't. They didn't bother me. And I want to make that clear. His comments didn't bother me. I think that those comments, though, kind of added to the fans' frustration because they had been feeling that. And then to have a player actually say that, it's like, okay, I feel vindicated in my feelings, which is kind of what Ellipsis 150 is saying. Those comments that Contreras made about the lack of development are exactly how the fans have been feeling. He is a conduit for how us fans have been feeling, a man of the people. And I think a lot of fans like Willson Contreras. Even with everything that has happened, it was not his fault. He didn't tell the Cardinals to go give him all that money. They bought into him as a catcher, and they're the ones who didn't help develop him as a catcher or give him the resources that he needed to be able to succeed, literally within your own division. Yeah. And they knew how the Cubs best used him, which was getting him a catching instructor. You already need one in your organization anyways, and they didn't do any of that. And they moved him over to first base. He's done that, and he's making the best of that situation. I think that he will wind up great at first base, and this is a great career move for him. I think he's done everything right, but I think that fans are just fed up, not with the players at all. Yeah. It's really the organization. I even see the comments coming in right now about the DeWitts. I feel like a lot of anger now has been directed to the DeWitts more so than even Mozeliak. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, because they gave Mo a budget that was apparently below major league standards. And Mo had to make that decision between having a developmental system or a major league roster with a payroll that's competitive. And he decided to go with the payroll that's competitive. A major league baseball team should not have to make that choice.
That's the part where I still don't understand the full answer of why it had to be one or the other. Development and free agency. Why couldn't it have been both?
They have to finance both, though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And they weren't willing to finance both.
That's the part that I think that has alienated fans.
Yeah, I would say so. And I know that there are fans that want the Cardinals to spend more on payroll, but the thing is, this year, when you look at the best players that were signed, I mean, they weren't going to sign Soto, right? I don't know that. Well, here's my thought. Well, I would rather do what the Cardinals are doing than go out and sign a Santander, who's with Toronto now and hit 44 home runs, but we don't know if he's going to be able to do that again. I don't want to not see Walker or Scott or Nootbaar or Gorman or Burleson or Donovan or Winn or Pages or Herrera. I don't want to see Anthony Santander or another moderate free agent in place of those guys. I'd rather see if those guys can live up to the standards that the Cardinals hope that they can live up to.
It's just the signings that he's made in the past, especially in the recent years, have burned them.
Yeah, all of them.
Because then it has been blocking those younger players getting the chances.
Send us on, and I know that we're sunshine lollipops here generally. When you guys are sending us, can you think of a free agent signing for the Cardinals in the last 5 years that has worked out? I mean, I look at Andrew Miller, I look at Contreras. Let's go over the last decade. Miller, Contreras, Fowler, Leak. Those are the highest paid.
I liked Jose Quintana, who, by the way, pitched well for
the
Brewers the other. Oh, you're right. That was a trade.
Yeah.
That was a trade.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think free agent signings.
Free agent signings just have not gone well here. Even like giving Carpenter the extension. Albert, I guess Albert is when he came back as a free agent for $2.5 million. That was a bargain.
Yeah.
But aside from that, it's been pretty bad in terms of their evaluation of other teams' players in free agency. And I'm like you. I like Willson Contreras, but the fact of the matter is they gave him $87.5 million to play catcher. And he 30 days in, they decided, well, we don't want him catching anymore. That's not a really good evaluation.
Can said Brett Cecil worked out well for Brett Cecil.
Oh, yeah. So, and you know
so
what? There were
true.
some.
That was so true.
He did win some video games. He did
that
those.
whole saga just made no sense to me whatsoever.
That's amazing. If you've never heard, he had an extra locker with a video game next to it. The initial Michaelis signing was a home run. Okay, we'll give you that. We'll give you that.
The initial portion of that.
Yeah, but it's just to me that's the biggest issue. Is this is a franchise that can't afford to have inefficient spending, and they have had, even though they'll defend it, Mo will defend it. They have had what I perceive as inefficient expenditures for players.
Well, and you've talked about in the past that we're used to having superstars here within the organization. You're used to having big names that are getting national attention, and then to kind of go through that decline in recent years of where you did have some big names with Albert Pujols coming back, of course, but I'm talking about some of the free agent signings that weren't exactly splashy, nor did they pan out well. That's different than what you've expected from this franchise.
Yeah, it's interesting because Mr. DeWitt has liked having stars on the team, but I get the sense now that more now than ever, because I've talked to you guys about the fact that I think Chaim Bloom is going to bring the Tampa Bay model, and the Cardinals are saying the right things about, no, this will be more of a hybrid. I think this is going to be the Tampa Bay model. I really think that's what we're going to see. Okay, Brooke, I want to do a quick take it or leave it with you, okay?
Okay.
This is from Ken Rosenthal in The Athletic this morning, who lists 9 managers on the hot seat. And one that he lists is Cardinals manager Oli Marmol. Here's what Ken Rosenthal wrote. Skip Schumacher is close with Marmol, as well as Cardinals coaches Daniel Descalso and John Jay, both of whom were former teammates in St. Louis. It is not out of the question that if the Cardinals named Schumacher manager, Marmol could remain on his staff, with Descalso and Jay also staying put. Descalso and Jay were Cardinals teammates with Molina and Pujols as well. Take it or leave it, Oli Marmol would accept a job on a Cardinal coaching staff after getting fired as their manager.
I would leave that.
I would too.
I don't know where Ken Rosenthal, and Ken Rosenthal is fantastic. So I'm not doubting that he has sources, but this maybe seems a little bit more in the category of assumption rather than sources. Are you gathering that?
Sources. Yeah,
he doesn't say sources. This is just his own thought process on there. Now, I think that the Cardinals, we talked about this. I mentioned this weeks ago that it was a huge miss by the Cardinals organization of not bringing in Skip Schumacher. We talked about how big of a difference maker Jim Montgomery has been for the Blues. I know it's completely different sports, but at the same time, Skip Schumacher is a difference maker, in my opinion.
It's clearly the bald guy factor.
It's the bald guy factor.
Montgomery, bald. Schumacher, bald.
There's something there. It's because the stress, they lost their hair, from all the stress and attention they put into the sport. That's what it is.
Yeah. Because
Banny, he didn't have hair.
Banny was bald.
That didn't work out well for him.
Okay, it's not 100%.
It's not 100% proven, like 99%.
Yeah, 99%.
99%. Bannister is the outlier there. But I think it was a huge miss by the Cardinals organization of not hiring Skip Schumacher to be the next manager. But I don't know where Ken Rosenthal got this information from. There's no way that I could see Oli saying, yeah, I got fired and I'm going to go be your bench coach now.
No, I don't see that.
Why would he do that? What would be the benefit, I guess, for him other than having a job?
Having a job, that would be the only thing. I don't see it either. I just don't think, and I get that it's fun for Ken Rosenthal probably to write that. I don't see that happening.
I don't understand. I think that would probably be, and I don't think he's wrong about Oli being in the hot seat, because just from the outside looking in, it seems like it's a lame duck season for Oli, even though it technically isn't, because the contract that he has. You have, though, a new leadership coming in. I'm sure that he has a great relationship that he's building up with Chaim Bloom, but is Bloom going to want to start with his own group of people when he starts this new era of Cardinals baseball?
And one of the things that was written in the piece is that Bloom probably felt like he got burned when he kept Alex Cora in Boston. So, and Cora had won the World Series in 2018, so you had a good reason, but apparently that relationship wasn't as good. If I'm Chaim Bloom, I want any boss in any walk of life would want to have somebody that they're comfortable with in that job that is subordinate to them.
Do you think you could even get Skip back from the Rangers organization? Because it seems like they're setting it up where he will take things over here.
I think it would have to be ideal, especially after he got burned by what happened in Florida, in Miami. But yeah, I think Skip has I know Skip has an affinity for the birds on the bat.
Mhm.
The idea of managing the Cardinals has to be appealing to him because that's a big part of his life. And he's still, it's not who's in charge, it's just the tradition, the birds on the bat. And he likes St. Louis. Yes, sir.
Can you imagine though, being like, yeah, not only just saying I'll take a demotion and be the assistant, but saying that I'm going to take the demotion and be the assistant of a guy who has managed less games than me, won less games than me, and I'm pretty sure has a worse winning percentage than I do as a manager.
Probably, yeah.
I just think all of those things together, how many people who, again, because we all have pride, we all have ego. I'm not saying that as a negative, but you work this hard to get this far in your baseball career as Alderman Marmol, a guy who grinded through the minors and then grinded through every level of being a coach to get here. You think he's going to sit there and say, a guy with less wins, less games coached, and a worse winning percentage, I'm going to take a back seat to him? I don't see the world when that happens.
No, I don't either. And Ollie has friends around baseball. I think he and Schilt they still have a reasonable relationship. By the way, the Padres, I think, have the best record in baseball. Had a complete game. Have you ever heard of this, Brooke? You guys are young. Matthew, have you ever heard about this? There's this thing called a complete game shutout in Major League Baseball. You ever heard of that?
Are you sure?
Is
that allowed in baseball?
It's from my childhood.
I've heard of perfect games and no hitters, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so this guy named Michael
I thought
King.
that was like banned.
No, it's not apparently, because of this guy named Michael King had one of those yesterday for the Padres, a complete game shutout.
It feels illegal, honestly.
It really does. Yeah,
it feels like it's outlawed in Major League Baseball now.
So anyway, but I know Ollie has a good relationship with Schulte, has a good relationship with AJ Hinch in Detroit. So and several other managers. And he's a disciple of really good fundamental baseball here in the Cardinal system. So I'm sure that Ollie could get a job that wasn't subservient to the new manager next year. And you know what? The other part of it is he's under contract for 26. He can just sit around and kind of pick and choose his spots because he'll be paid for 26 either way.
Exactly. I just can't believe that Ken Rosenthal would think that. What does that say that Ken Rosenthal views, like how he views Ollie Marmol then? As a whipping boy, which is, I mean, he is kind of like the whipping boy right now for the Cardinals anyways. And what would that make him if he did that?
Oh man, it's not a good.
It would be endless. Like the amount of just negative attention he would get from that would be endless.
Yeah, it would. Can we bring that one back about taking Fetty out? Because here, Ollie took, this is from Ghostface Gaming. Ollie took Fetty out after he had a no-hitter going. He could have pitched a complete game versus Pirates. Ollie is trash. I don't think that Fetty was built up enough.
No.
Also, he had thrown 81 pitches.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
52 strikes.
Yeah.
He wasn't locating, and he wasn't getting guys to chase on stuff outside the zone. It was a solid, obviously, game, but Joe Rod, I was here in the Sports Hub STL studio, and at one point the broadcast mentioned that he had the no-hitter. I turned to Joe Roderick, who had been watching the entire game, and said he had a no-hitter going, and Joe goes, honestly, there's been so many base runners, I would never have guessed that. That was the level of Eric Fetty's no-hitter that he had going. It was not as clean as the phrase would dictate. Yeah. And so I think harping in on that means Ollie's a bad manager. Yeah. Come on.
Can we bring up spaces? Because I think this is interesting. Yeah, I don't think fans are going to be okay if next season Pujols is managing somewhere else, and we chose not to because he hasn't managed in MLB before. It's interesting that the Cardinals have been roundly criticized ever since Tony La Russa left for hiring Matheny, who hadn't managed in MLB or coached.
Yeah.
And then after Matheny, it was Schilt, who hadn't managed in MLB. And then after Schilt, it's been Marmol, right? So you've had three guys, none of whom had experience. And the Cardinals have been very heavily criticized for that. So they wouldn't be criticized for Albert. And if you're going to bring in Albert Pujols, you better be ready to spend and bring in great players, because there isn't a great manager that doesn't have great players. And you don't know how good of a teacher a guy like Albert Pujols is. We just haven't seen it. Now, he might be, but he is managing all-star teams in the Dominican Republic. Everybody plays all day in the Dominican Republic. They understand the fundamentals. So if you don't have a great teacher in Pujols, you better make sure that he has a great staff, that is a teaching staff, and you better have some great players for him. If you're planning on winning big with him, you don't just think that he's going to walk into this situation as it sits right now and win 100 games.
I feel like also too, you have to be careful what you wish for as a fan, because you also see eventually every single manager is going to piss you off, right?
They're going to get fired.
They're going to make you angry as a fan base. Would that change your perspective of Albert Pujols as the player and as the person if all of a sudden things just did not go well with him as a Cardinals manager here?
No, I have faith enough in him. He's paid attention. He's a really bright.
But I'm saying the fan base, how quickly people change.
They would have turned on him if he would have signed that $210 million offer with the Cardinals and he got hurt and wasn't as productive as he had been in his first 11 years.
Yeah.
Social media would not have been pleasant. But I think that he deserves an opportunity, but I also think that opportunity should come with at least a little bit of dues paying.
Let's Turn 2 says Washington is not likely the long-term manager for the Angels. Pujols there?
There you go. Yeah, that might be an opportunity, although Washington is off to a great start with the Angels.
I know. Did anybody see that coming?
Yeah. No, not with the group of players they have.
He's
a guy that makes people better.
It's cute that anyone alive thinks that they're going to outlast Ron Washington on this planet. Sorry, like you could be. I'm 30. I'm like 33. I'm not confident that I'm outlasting Ron Washington as a manager in baseball, let alone on this
He's
planet.
72.
Yeah. He's going to be 145, taking a team to the ALCS again.
Is it formaldehyde?
King, he's going to live to be 200.
Yeah. Formaldehyde is a colorless, strong-smelling chemical that is widely used in manufacturing building materials and household products. It's also a byproduct of combustion and natural processes, meaning it can be present in elevated concentrations indoors. Basically, what formaldehyde does is make you last forever.
He's going to live for. Ron Washington's going to be managing baseball when the Yankees run out of numbers because they've retired all of them. That's the rough age that Ron Washington will keep on going.
Cronky Hater says, I know Randall wants Skip, but Pujols or Molina would certainly help the issue of Contreras complaining yesterday, getting fans in the seats. I think that it would. I don't doubt that it would get fans back in the seats.
So would winning.
Winning does help that a lot.
Yeah. That's the thing is how long. Number one, you'll never see Yadi. All due respect, Yadi's not going to be talking to the media, so you aren't going to see Yadi. Albert, I'm not saying he can't do it, and I'm sure that there would be people that would buy tickets to see him standing in the dugout. I don't know how many.
I think a lot of people would.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people would. But to your point, I think winning baseball is more important. I feel like Skip is he fits in line with what the organization wants to do.
And here's
moving
the thing.
forward, when you're trying to get the most out of these younger players, start this new era of Cardinals baseball, but still keep the Cardinals way with new outside perspective coming in. I feel like Skip fits that to a T.
I don't disagree. So here's, and I think he's proven himself to be a good manager. But regardless of who the manager is, let's just assume that Albert Pujols is wearing number 5, okay, for the Cardinals. And you're at a game, let's say May 23rd, and the Cubs are in town, Sunday afternoon. And Albert leaves his starting pitcher, Michael McGreevy, in the game in the 3rd inning. McGreevy's allowed 2 in the 1st, had the bases jammed in the 2nd, and then in the 3rd, everything gets away, and it's 7-0 with runners at 1st and 3rd, and he didn't get a reliever up until the 6th run had scored. Finally gets out to the mound. Is he going to be cheered?
No. People will be furious.
Yeah. So he knows what he has available in the bullpen that day, but his team is down 7-0 with 2 outs in the 3rd inning, and he's walking out to the mound, and you think he has kept that starter in there too long. You going to cheer him?
Yeah. I think people who think he would never be criticized, I think he would be criticized. He would be criticized. He would make mistakes.
We'd hold him accountable.
We'd hold him accountable here. Might be a little afraid to, but yeah, I think that if you don't have, these success, and I do believe though, Albert will be a great manager. I think that he's taking the right steps. I think that he understands everything that goes with it. And I think Yadi will be a good manager too. We've seen what he's done with Puerto Rico and that he also manages down there. But I feel like he still wants more time with his son, who's getting ready to be done with high school baseball
yeah.
into college
Right.
baseball.
Bless you, Matthew. I want to get Devin Hilton up here too, because this is another point I want to make.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we talked about this last week. I was talking about it with people at the ballpark. But Tony La Russa's don't grow on trees. I think the organization hasn't compensated for that loss since he left, and they don't seem to understand why it's not working. I would say that it's more the loss of Dave Duncan than the loss of Tony La Russa, because Dave Duncan could make pitchers better. Dave Duncan saved this franchise maybe tens of millions of dollars between 1996 and 2011 with the way that he made pitchers better. And that goes for Chris Carpenter. That goes for a guy like Jason Marquis. It goes for a guy like Jeff Suppan, who was an NLCS MVP. It goes for a guy like Jeff Weaver, who won in the playoffs for the Cardinals. It goes for Todd Wellemeyer and Joel Pinheiro and all of those guys that he made better. Kent Bottenfield won 18 games. He saved the Cardinals so much money because he made pitchers better than they really were. And you make a great point, Devin, but I would say that more than Tony, I know this is a big statement, more than Tony, they didn't appreciate what they had in Dave Duncan.
I think that's a really good point, and why it's still so surprising to me the Cardinals drifted away from development. I understand that they wanted to spend more money in free agency, get those guys, but why get away from something that was a big part of your DNA? I know that you can't go out and get another Dave Duncan. He doesn't grow out in trees.
Right.
You're not going to find Dave Duncans everywhere, but that's why it still confuses me. When they've seen it work in their organization, they had success with development in that regard. Why would you drift away from that?
Yeah, again, it all comes back to money, doesn't it?
It does.
Because they could spend on one thing or the other. Rather than develop a guy, they signed Mike Leake. Ooh,
that was I feel like I need a trigger warning before you say that name.
Sorry about that.
That was bad. That was really bad.
Yeah.
Maddox, I see that name is being brought up again. Mike Maddox, when he left the Cardinals organization.
I think I wonder if he was just tired of it. And I think the Cardinals, I don't know if I think they pushed him out the door.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And that's just, we're doing our own Ken Rosenthal assumption
But here's
here.
the thing. They said
that's what what
right?
it felt like. Yes.
And they said that, he doesn't want to be back. And they made it sound like he wanted to take some time away from baseball. And then the next year, he's the pitching coach in Texas again.
It's like, it really did seem like, I thought he was actually retiring.
I did too.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. He's going to join the Rangers pitching staff. Okay, well, that makes sense as a coach. Do you think that Ollie, maybe some of his frustration too, was that he also noticed the development had declined, and it was really handcuffing him as a manager, because then you want to see these young guys bring them up, and they weren't prepared for any of those situations at the major league level. We talked about Jordan Walker. We talked about it because Ollie Marmol he doesn't have control of what happened with Jordan Walker when he was switched over the outfield.
If we saw that, he had to see that, right? He knew what he was getting, and seeing guys that were deficient. And I think the expectation was, because he was excellent at teaching the fundamentals at the minor league level, that they thought that he would be really good at doing it at the major league level. But the problem is, you get to the major league level, and I've asked every manager about this in trying to teach people how to play at the major league level, which Tony hated. Tony La Russa said, hey, the major leagues aren't for developing players, because once players get to the majors, they're saying, I made it here. I'm going to do what I did to get me here. I'm not going to listen to you guys. I'm going to do what I did, what got me here. And so it really does hurt the credibility of a manager when he's trying to teach a guy how to play who can't play but thinks he knows how.
But also he has his own things he has to deal with, like veterans to manage, other players to manage. He's trying to win at the same time because his career is on the line too. So you can't expect them. While I'm glad that they got John Jay in, I think that I can see how much it's helped out Jordan Walker already with John Jay being a part of this organization. You shouldn't be teaching these players how to do things at the major league level. You shouldn't have to discover things when they get to the major league level, like Jordan Walker's struggle in the outfield, or Herrera, all of a sudden his arm is not great. And we didn't figure that out until he got here to the majors. That calls into question the evaluation process and the preparation process of developing these guys.
By the way, let's make a point here that the Cardinals are only 2 games back of the Doyers for the second wild card spot.
So they're really good.
Yeah, really good. Only 2 games behind the Doyers. And they are also 2.5 games behind the Cubs for the top spot in the National League Central. By the way, Cardinal baseball tonight, Gray and Valdez, 6:45. The Astros are in town, and we have great programming for you here on Sports Hub STL. Cards Hub 365, the pregame coming up at 1 o'clock, and then we'll have the postgame for you after the game as well. So a lot of great Cardinal coverage for you today on Sports Hub STL, brought to you by Gray Bar.
Now it's time for the Grim Report. The Blues, their road trip. We talked about this last week. I think that we should ban sports teams from St. Louis from going on the road, because road trips just have not been kind
No, they haven't.
for
That's a
them.
good idea,
They
yeah.
just need to play at home. Everybody just comes here to St. Louis. It will be better for the economy, better for the teams, because they perform better at home than on the road.
The UFL gave the Battlehawks an extra home game.
Oh,
A lot of good
yeah.
that did yesterday.
Right.
But no, I like your point. I like your idea. Every game at home.
Yeah. We'll just change everything for the teams.
So,
it's more beneficial.
0-2-1 though on the road after the 12-game winning streak, and I have every confidence that the Blues will be able to win tomorrow. And it's hard to it's hard to win. And they, by the way, they lost to the President's Trophy winning team. They lost to a team that was in the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and then they lost to Seattle. But and that was in 7 shootouts, and the Blues did not play their best game.
It concerns me, though, and I just want to get everybody's thoughts on this. If you are just concerned a little bit with closing out games, has been a recent issue. And Randy, you were talked about this, that Montgomery's talked about this too, is that they have to figure out ways to close out games. And that Kraken loss was another example of that, of where they let things get away from them in the third period.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that concerns me. A positive, though, while it wasn't the exact timeline that the Blues wanted, they did get Colton Parayko back. Broberg had to come back to St. Louis for personal reasons. Can I just say this, by the way, because I saw some of this on social media, that there was people criticizing Broberg, like, hope it's something important. I'm pretty sure it'd be something really important for him to come back to St. Louis for personal reasons.
It was pretty important.
Yeah, I would assume, like, it's very
also
important.
It also wasn't a bad thing. Calm down, people. It's fine.
Oh, good.
Exactly.
I thought it was a bad thing.
I hope that everything is okay. Whatever it is with Broberg, I hope that everything's okay. But for a player to not be there for that important of a game, I would assume that it's very important, whatever it was. But you did get Colton Parayko back, and I think that's a huge positive for them.
Right. And so all they have to do is beat the Utah Hockey Club tomorrow. Now, over the years, this used to be the Arizona Coyotes. Over the years, the Blues have had their issues with Arizona, but they just have they're a better team than the Utah is. So all they have to do is play their game tomorrow, and if they win, they're in. They control their own destiny. Calgary has been fantastic of late. They're kind of taking advantage of the schedule that the Blues took advantage of during the 12-game winning streak when they weren't playing the best that the league has to offer. And all you got to do is win. And then once you get into the playoffs, then you take your chances. And, oh, by the way, the Winnipeg Jets do have to deal with that curse of winning the President's Trophy.
That curse that lives on.
Yeah.
I never want to root for the San Jose Sharks, but that's what was happening last night. But the Flames took care of business there.
Why do you not want to root for the Sharks? Because Stalter likes them?
I just don't like the Sharks.
Okay, that's fair.
They're always
Are they
pesky.
scary?
Yeah, that actually is. We've talked about mascots and being creative. That is a good mascot. Not many people utilize that.
Yeah, I get it. I understand.
It's scary, but we have a lot of people who are chiming in that they are concerned. Ellipsis 150. I am concerned. They went on a franchise record 12-game win streak. Now they're on a 3-game losing streak. We talked about this. If you wanted them to just keep winning for the rest of the regular season, which it seemed like would be impossible, but so did the 12-game win streak.
Right.
It is nice to get some losing, though, out of the way just to evaluate what you need to fix.
And you succeeded when a lot of people didn't think you would with Parayko out of the lineup. And then you lose Dylan Holloway, and you're trying to incorporate people like Snuggerud and Dvorsky into the lineup. And you're going against really good teams, at least the first 2. Really good hockey teams that are going to be in the playoffs. And Seattle is, you mentioned the pesky nature of San Jose. Seattle is pesky. Now, Grubauer isn't that good, but they have a lot of good players on that team. And I'm not surprised that they won. I wish the Blues would have won.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that we waited until shooter number 7 for Jordan Kyrou to be our...
I don't know.
Isn't that weird?
It is weird.
I figured he'd be top 4. So maybe he's just not... I haven't paid that close of attention. Maybe he's just not that good in the shootouts.
I think he is, though.
He's
I
a
would
sniper.
assume.
Yeah, he
that
should
would
be,
be
yeah.
something that would be pretty beneficial to have that kind of
Yeah.
weapon in your back pocket for a shootout.
Yep. Let's turn to. They heard people saying a loss would be a good thing, so they tripled up. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
That's true. You just got to get the losing out of the way right before the playoffs.
Yeah, I am. Well, I'm not concerned. And by the way, my only real, because Doug Armstrong told us at the beginning of the season, he said, "Yeah, I have expectations of making the playoffs." And I thought for a long time that he would be disappointed. Brooke, I don't know about you, but I think making the playoffs for this team is a great achievement if they make the playoffs. And I think the experience of participating in playoff hockey for this young group as it's presently constituted, I think it'll be a real advantage for them moving forward.
I think it would be a huge advantage for this team. My expectations, especially going this year, of course, Drew Bannister was still your coach,
Banny.
were very low. I was kind of the same pathway with the Cardinals of, okay, this is a transition season. This is where we're just letting the youth take over. My expectations weren't high, but bring in Monty, one of the best moves that Doug Armstrong has made for his team. Now you have Jim Montgomery here, difference maker that we mentioned with coaching. He is a difference maker, clearly. And I think he's getting the most out of these guys, younger and veteran players.
And by the way, had Doug Armstrong on the TV show a couple of weeks ago and tried to, I don't know if I told you guys this, tried to make the comparison between this and 2019 because coaching change, bad until you got good, the long winning streak. Yeah, gooder. And he said, yeah, I don't want to rain on your parade, but it's completely different. Because this is a young team. And sometimes we forget that these guys are 23, 24, 25 years old. It is a super young hockey team. And there aren't many people that have been through the wars. The defense has, but offensively, when you look up front, Thomas has been through the wars. Who else you got that's been through the wars up front?
When you're talking about
just
like the playoffs?
Yeah, your top 9 forward. Sonny, well, let's go top 12. Sonny, you just don't have a ton of people that have been through those. When Holloway is there, he's been through it. But I think it'll be really beneficial for the young group to experience the ratchet up in intensity that occurs once playoff hockey begins.
I want to hit this while we're talking about this. Ghostface Gaming's asking, what if the Blues and Calgary finish with the same amount of points? If you have not seen it, the playoff tiebreakers, the first one is regulation wins. The second one is number of games won, excluding games won by shootout, which is ROW. So technically, the Calgary Flames could tie the Blues for that first tiebreaker because the Blues sit at 31 regulation wins. Calgary Flames sit at 30. But second tiebreaker, so if they're tied at 31 games apiece, or if they're tied even at 32 games apiece, it would drop to ROW, where the Blues have a 4-game lead over the Flames. So, and heck, if the Blues win their one regulation, they're at 96 points, and so that's how it plays out. Essentially, unless the Blues win their game in overtime and the Flames win both of their games in regulation, the Blues will win the first tiebreaker. And if they're both tied at 96, the Blues will go to the playoffs and the Flames will just miss it.
Okay. Just win tomorrow, right? Just win, baby?
Just win. If you win in regulation, you're at 96 points and you're at 32 regulation wins, which is, and that's the absolute highest that Calgary could get to. And then that would go to the next tiebreaker where you have a very comfortable lead. So yeah, you essentially win and you're in.
And we haven't heard any updates on Dylan Holloway, have we?
No. JR speculated that it was going to be more long-term and that the Blues didn't hear what they wanted to hear from his trip to the doctor's office. I had heard that they thought that he might be back for the playoffs, but that was before what JR heard. So we'll see.
The week to week and then not much updates. I feel like if there was a surgery, we would hear about that by now. Correct?
Yeah.
So hopefully he'll be okay.
Yeah. So let's see. Somebody's texting. Let's see if we got word.
You're like Jim Edmonds right now. Somebody, I just got a text.
I fancy myself as Adam Schefter, but
I was going to say, don't you miss that with Jim Edmonds whenever he'd get a text and then we would know about it on the broadcast?
Oh.
And then he'd read it out loud.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything interesting?
My son's little league coach.
Oh. Okay.
Isn't that what Jimmy talked about?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, did you get that text from 2007?
I was confused at first. I was like, but Jim would do that all the time.
Do you have Joe Roberts' phone? I'm very confused what's happening right now.
So, hey, you know what you need to do? you need to make sure that you've subscribed to our YouTube page and like this video that you're watching right now. And if you haven't already, go to sportshubstl.com and sign up for the Hub newsletter. It's sent to your inbox twice a week, and anytime St. Louis sports news breaks, you're going to be the first to know about Sports Hub STL events and merchandise, get exclusive content and prize opportunities, and more. While you're on the site, check out all the St. Louis sports content, including game recaps, programming highlights, sports news and opinion, gambling tips, and more. It's all on the website at sportshubstl.com. And you also need to know this, Brooke. I don't know if you were aware of this, but baseball season is officially here.
Is it actually?
It is. And with that being the case, it's time for you to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. It's your fastball right down the middle, and it's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they have more or less of a particular stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California and Texas and Georgia and Missouri and more. And all you need to do is cash in on your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. And I love playing Pick 6 every day. Shall we do a Pick 6 now? You want to? You want to do a Pick 6? Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play baseball. We're going to play Pick 6. And I am going to pick, should I pick 2 or 3, Matthew? We'll let you decide.
2.
Okay, we're going to pick 2. Okay, one of them tonight, Paul Skeens, 7.5 strikeouts against Washington, higher or lower? I'm going to go with more, right? Especially with his last performance. He's at home against Washington. So Paul Skeens, more than 7.5 strikeouts. And, I'm going to go with my top 2 because I've done this already. Tarek Skubal, more than 7.5 strikeouts against Milwaukee. So there we have it. Very easy. All you need to do is pick a pack of pickled peppers, pick a couple of players, and you can win big time cash from DraftKings Pick 6. Use the promo code STL Sports to sign up, and the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
But you got to say it fast.
Peter
Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Peter Piper. I can't.
Peter Piper
I
picked a
can't
peck of
do
pickled
that.
peppers. It's an alliterative.
I was saying when we were muted that there is a lot of. I remember in TV there was a lot of anchors who would have their little things that they would say to help them before going on air, and that was one of them for some of them.
Yellow.
What is it?
Red, yellow, mellow, yellow.
Red,
good.
yellow, mellow, yellow.
That's the what
Was that from Anchorman? Yeah, that's from Anchorman.
Tip of the tongue, teeth of the
Right.
lips.
I love
ones, and he's got the little scotch. He starts drinking tip of the tongue, teeth of the lips.
So my college professor was a legend in Nashville, longtime anchor and news director at Channel 5 in Nashville, which is kind of like the channel in Nashville and been around forever. He was actually the one who gave Oprah her first job.
Oh, wow.
So pretty big deal that he has Oprah in his phone book. But I remember he hated Anchorman because that was his era of anchoring. Hated it, hated everything about it, but it was his era of anchoring. And I remember one time we got in at like a huge cutout of Will Ferrell's Anchorman, and he hated us.
Ron Burgundy.
Yeah.
Unique New York.
Those were different times back then.
Yes, they were. They had a lot of fun.
They did. They could smoke like cigars on set, some brandy and all that stuff.
Scotch. So, Brooke, Matthew, I got to tell you, yesterday, nice warm day here in the Lou. And my plan throughout the course of the day was to go out and get stuff accomplished. I was going to clean up the car. I was going to get laundry done. I was going to have a productive Sunday.
Yeah.
Then I started watching the Masters. And I didn't stop watching the Masters until it was complete. I got nothing done because I think it might have been, I told you guys earlier, my favorite Masters, but I haven't been as drawn into a long form event like that, which was 5 hours.
Yeah.
In a long time. I just could not pull myself away from watching that golf tournament.
Because it was like a roller coaster all the way into the end. You didn't know if Rory would be able to pull it off finally.
Yeah. And I thoroughly planned. I said, okay, after this hole, I'm going to leave. And then, okay, after this hole, I'm going to, and I just kept watching hole after hole. It was awesome. I thought it was really compelling. And Matthew and I were talking before the show, and Tiger winning in 1997 was such a spectacular performance. His first, and as Jim Nantz called it, a win for the ages. His win in 2019 was great. Jack's win in 1986 was amazing. I think this was my favorite Masters ever to
Out
watch.
of all of them?
Yeah.
Wow. I think 2019 personally for me is up there because then I was able to understand the gravity
Mhm.
of everything, all the turmoil with Tiger Woods' career
Mhm.
leading up to that. And he hadn't won. And was it
Had not won since
10?
08.
Oh, yeah, it
They
was
made
a
the US Open in
long
08.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then all of that leading up to it, where there was so much turmoil publicly behind the scenes, or well, it was behind the scenes and then it went out there publicly, as we all know, with Tiger Woods for him to win in 2019. I think that one's still top for me. But Rory, it always felt like he would never be able to pull this off.
Yeah.
For him to win.
Even yesterday, when he starts off with the double bogue, and then as things kind of start to fall apart in the last 5 holes, 15, 16, 17, 18, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, but the shot on 13, I thought he was done.
Yeah.
You don't recover from a shot that bad and that weak, but he was able to. And the shots that he made on 17 and then on 18, especially the one in the playoff, were spectacular golf shots. So you give him credit for his resiliency and his gifts, but only the 6th guy ever to come up with the career Grand Slam. And
incredible.
just the way he did it, because there were times throughout the course of the day where I thought early on, second hole, DeChambeau. Okay, DeChambeau is going to win this thing. And then I thought Oberg is going to make a move. And then I thought Scotty would make a move. And then Justin Rose does make a move and winds up tying it and sending it. There were so many opportunities for Rory to lose that thing, but he never let it completely get away.
Yeah, I think it was a 10-year drought for Tiger for 2019, and this was an 11-year drought for Rory to be able to get this.
And
to
14
for a
years
major
since he had
win.
won his first major, and 11 since he was on the cusp of the career Grand Slam.
And then the dramatics at the end of it too, of where you had that sudden death playoff with Justin Rose, and then just the emotions from him afterwards. I think anytime that you are able to see an athlete kind of break that character of what we see, especially in golf, of that stoicism. And I know that Rory is not exactly the most stoic of figures in all of golf, but where that moment of the emotions that just take them over and overwhelm him, his speech was just, I mean, that was amazing.
He was
saying
fantastic.
that afterwards.
By the way, there's nobody better than Joe Buck at letting a crowd lay out.
Yeah.
But I thought the performance of Jim Nantz and Trevor Immelman in saying nothing for about 5 minutes was fantastic.
Yeah, because then you're not making the moment about you. You're letting the moment be the story, the centerpiece. And not many broadcasters do that anymore, by the way.
And the crowd was loud for that entire time. They're chanting, they're clapping, they're happy. And then you see Rory with his wife and child, and then all the people that he hugged. And I just thought it was great theater on television.
The way that he told Poppy to never give up on his dreams.
Yeah,
like, I that stuff kills me, especially like becoming a mom. Anything with like kids right now sends me into like a little sad fit. So yeah, I cried yesterday.
So, and I wonder now, with the career Grand Slam and being only one of 6 golfers, he's taken a lot of criticism over the last 11 years and been called a choke artist, and his abilities have been called into question. I've always thought he was sensational, but I wonder if a lot of that criticism will go by the boards now because of this win. I hope so.
And also just how publicly he is involved with a lot of things with PGA Tour and Live, and how vocal he's been with a lot of that stuff. There's been a lot, just when you were talking about all the stuff with Tiger Woods and how tumultuous that was leading up to that 2019 Masters win, Rory has had very similar things too.
And unfortunately for him, he kind of took the bullet for the PGA Tour when he expressed his disdain for Live, and then they said, "Oh, well, we'll try to partner up with him." And now it looks like, by the way, that's not going to happen. And he still does say, he said in the Netflix documentary, what's it called again? Full Swing.
Yes.
He's told somebody there, he said, "Yeah, I hate Live." So I think that he legitimately does. And I think
he was kind of left out to dry in that situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah. So I have to believe that he really enjoyed beating DeChambeau too yesterday.
I think so.
And it being a playoff between he and another PGA guy and not another live guy. Dozen live guys played in this tournament, by the way. And I think that the number of live people that'll be playing in majors, it's with those not getting world golf ratings points, I think that number will decrease over the years.
Does anybody honestly watch live?
No, apparently not. They're on Fox and they didn't get watched. Randy and Brooke, we're having an argument in the chat.
I
Could you
see that.
St. Louis ever getting another NFL team or even getting an NBA team? I say no. Ever is a long time.
It is
Forever
a really
is a
long
long
time. I would say it would be more likely they would get an NBA team than an NFL team.
I would say that is definitely the case. I think our new mayor is all in on getting an NBA team as long as we don't have to pay anything for it. So that'd be great.
How do you convince people here? I think that's a big part of this question too, is how do you convince, because you will need taxpayers to buy into, say, an NFL team, NBA team wants to come to St. Louis. You would have to get taxpayers and citizens here in St. Louis and in the region to buy back into helping out, because it's going to be necessary to help out a team. There will be some that's going to be put on the taxpayers, which I know is a very sore subject here with everything that happened with Kroenke. I completely understand that. But how do you convince people here to buy back into that?
Well, number one, and I haven't been around a lot of NBA buildings recently, and obviously you've got a different animal altogether with the one that you have in Inglewood, right? With the Clippers. But from everything I understand, when the renovations were done to Enterprise Center 5 years ago, at that point, it was a state-of-the-art NBA arena. They've done the locker rooms for an NBA teams to be involved in. So that's where an NBA team would play. You'd have to find a way for a franchise to have a practice facility, but that wouldn't be as expensive as a new arena. So, and maybe an owner that has a lot of money would be interested in something like that. I don't know what teams might. I think the only team that might become available is New Orleans.
Yeah,
because they're going to expand, but we aren't getting an expansion team, right? Vegas, Seattle, and then you're probably
those cities are the ones who are getting expansion teams.
So I don't think that we're getting, and we would have to steal somebody's NBA team.
Which would be, Kroenke Hater says, is Kara quoted saying she would welcome an NBA team? There's an old tweet from back that I don't know if you've seen on social media that's coming back around that people are retweeting. It was in 2020 where she said, somebody was competing for an NBA team, and she was saying that if she became mayor, she would do whatever it would take to be able to get an NBA team here to St. Louis.
That tweet is the most like you have to politicians, like the one like radar you need with politicians that starts freaking out is, oh, my bad on this one. Hold on a second.
Let's continue talking.
We can still talk.
You guys still talk.
Okay.
But yeah, she was saying that because she was still running at the time.
She will not, I guarantee you, she will not do whatever it takes to bring an NBA team to St. Louis.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like a team to be here one day, whether it be NBA, NFL. Yep. I personally, and I could be completely wrong, because as you mentioned, forever is a really long time. It could be a time where both of us are not around anymore, where maybe NFL could come back here.
More likely than you.
Randy. But at the same time, I think that ship has sailed with the NFL personally, because the NFL doesn't like to lose. And you were able to beat them in a pretty strong case, get a lot of money out of them. I can't see them being super excited to wanting to come back to St. Louis.
I don't think that they would want to either. And again, the NFL is not going to expand for a long, long time. They're very happy with the scheduling of 32 teams. They're very happy with only sharing the revenues with 31 other owners. So I don't see the NFL expanding anytime soon. And yes, the Bengals are available, but we aren't building a new stadium for the Bengals, and we are building a practice facility for the Bengals. Did you see the Rams are building a $10 billion practice facility and development for a practice facility? $10 billion practice facility and development.
On the Kara Spencer thing. This is the class president election saying I'm going to get lunch doubled. Like, you're going to get 2 lunches.
Oh,
this is what the eighth. This is the eighth class president saying I'm going to get recess, double time. I'm going to get 2 lunches for everyone.
You got my vote.
That's what Kara Spencer tweeting that was. That was a class election promising more vacation days. It's not real. It's fodder for people to just grab on and retweet so that people talk about it. It's not a real thing. To Randy's point, I don't even know how big of a fan a lot of the people on the board of aldermen are of actually funding sports in the first place, let alone doing something as big as trying to get an NBA team.
Can I say something controversial?
Yes.
I don't understand the point of the board of aldermen sometimes.
That's not controversial.
I want to say that.
But I can also tell you. So how many
every city have, like,
how many do we have in the city now? We cut it down from 28 to how many?
23?
20, is it less?
18,
okay.
something like
But
that.
here's the thing. All of these, not all, I shouldn't say. Here's my perception though, Brooke.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just for the Board of Aldermen people. This is the people in the 55 municipalities in the county that have mayors and
many municipalities.
Yeah, 55. They have mayors and they have city administrators and they have prosecutors and stuff like that probably make $15,000 a year from it. But they've got their own little power base. They can go and say, "Hey, I'm the city manager in Glendale, or I'm the mayor of whatever, whatever community you want to name."
What is it?
Paigedale.
The Edmondson? What is that?
Yeah,
like, what is
Edmondson,
that?
Yeah,
Do they have their own little mayor?
I think they do. Yeah.
No, they don't. Do they really?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Is it even a real place?
It is. Yes,
Because I see it like at the airport, but I'm like, where are these people
it's
living?
Probably not much. but see, that's the thing though. These for them, that's like them being president. So they have their own little power bases, and so nobody wants to give up their little bit of power. So the board of aldermen, of which you speak, they're all out for number one, and it's a good thing if they're out for their constituents. But the other part of this is that this is why we'll never have a merger in this town, because there are just too many people that have their own little power bases that they don't want to give up.
That's the thing that I'm saying. And I don't know. I've only seen certain bills that they've worked on, which interesting. And then also I've only been able to experience them on a sports side. And just some of the questions that they asked, especially when we had Carolyn Kindle, who was willing and spent so much time and money to build an MLS stadium. I think that if people here in St. Louis truly knew the amount of just ridiculous, stupid questions that they asked Carolyn Kindle after she's already had showcased how much money she was willing to front, and they were not willing to give her a break on anything, trying to always bring up the Kroenke thing. That's where I'm like, you got to get past the Kroenke thing in certain aspects.
Right.
Carolyn Kindle has already shown how much that she's done for the community. Even prior to bringing a team in, she worked her tail off to spend her own money to be able to do all of that stuff. And some of the questions that were being asked were the most ridiculous questions. You were there for the alderman stuff.
And by the
some
way,
of the most ridiculous questions I've ever heard in my entire life.
Preposterous. And this is a person, by the way, who was in charge of the foundation that was giving like $6 million a year to the St. Louis public schools.
Yes.
And they're wondering.
She's invested in St. Louis.
Totally
She's a whole portfolio that shows how invested she is in St. Louis.
Yep.
And the questions that she was receiving just were not even, and questioning is good, but then it was all about Kroenke in these alderman sessions. Was it not?
It was, yeah.
It was like, it has nothing to do with
very
it.
disrespectful.
It was.
I will say, you do need something like the Board of Aldermen. I think other towns just call them councilmen, and they have a town council. But you do need something like that. You have to handle smaller versions of the neighborhoods.
We need in this?
I'm not saying you need this many. I'm not saying you need it broken up the way it is. We literally voted to lower the amount of aldermen, and lower the amount of wards, and contract the wards and combine a couple of them. And the Board of Aldermen said, we don't need that.
Those face gaming.
You definitely need checks and balances with any system, but it's just, for me, it was a very unique experience. That was my first taste of the alderman, and then after doing a little bit more research on some of the stuff they work on, I'm like,
everywhere.
Are you guys considered Gen Zers, by the way?
No, we're millennials.
That's just Wilson.
Millennials. Which is the group that is all about experiences now? They don't really care about owning houses. It's all about experience.
I would imagine that's Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Because millennials, we're just in a constant existential crisis of how we can't afford anything.
Okay. I wonder why. It's almost
I
like the
just
world keeps
think
crumbling.
That Gen Z, Board of Aldermen, very similar, because you're all about the experiences.
Jesus.
Board of Aldermen, you can become mayor. Board of Aldermen, you can find yourself in jail. It's all about experience. It's all about experience.
And let's not forget, Randy's generation of politicians very different. Like Vervis Jones going to jail after he, was mayor of St. Louis. Very different thing for the boomers.
Well, but Louis Rice, was it Louis Rice? No, what was
Louis Reed?
Louis Reed, yeah, he went well. He got.
I had a lot of faith in him, honestly. I really did. Louis Reed was a great guy. Great guy. Mm-hmm. Big mistake. There's no excuse on that part. But
by the way, who was it that told us they were retiring? We just want to congratulate you on retiring. It was one of our regulars, Ghostface Gaming. Today is the first day of my retirement. I'm about to mow my grass. Good show, Randy and Brooke. I love this podcast. Peace out. Congratulations on your retirement too. Pretty awesome, Ghostface Gaming. Glad to hear that.
I did see a comment that I agree with Smooth Productions. I'm only going to talk about comments I agree with, of course.
Are you smooth operator?
Kidding.
Man, you're gonna run for alderman and kill it, bro.
Actually, I am. Smooth Production says, wait, those same people, alderman, who couldn't come up with an agreement on how to spend the lawsuit money will do whatever it takes to bring an NBA, NFL team to the exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. What is happening with that money, by the way?
Nothing right now.
I keep trying to follow the updates, and I don't feel like there is any.
It's earning
updates.
Interest, apparently, which is
I guess that's a positive.
Yep. So, Brooke and Matthew, I asked you guys back in our radio days if the Tennessee quarterback who was going to get his first start, I believe, when I did this Take It or Leave It, I said, does he have the perfect name for a quarterback in 2024 at the time in college football? Because his name is Iamaleava. And what happened?
He left.
Actually, they parted ways, I think.
Oh, it's
Tennessee and Nico
That's always the generic, generic thing there.
So did he leave or did they kick him off?
I would say that they're saying that they decided not to continue negotiations with him.
Yeah, long walk, short cliff.
Yeah. So he was making 2.4, was asking for 4.4 million bucks. We talked about this on Friday, how the word came out. And then Saturday morning, Josh Heupel tells the Volunteers team, yeah, he's not on the team anymore. I think this is great. I think it's number. You
like it because it's Tennessee. That's why you think it's great.
No, I think that taking a stand when somebody doesn't want to live up to their contract is something that we needed to see in sports.
I think that you're correct. And we were talking about this on Friday when the initial reports were coming out, and my mind has completely changed because I'm always on the player's side of they should be able to go get their bag. If they want to get more money, but now that more details have emerged from this, Randy and everybody, it doesn't look good. And in my opinion, it seems like the people who are surrounding Nico, and how do you pronounce it? I should remember how to pronounce it now. Cause now I want to say Iamaleava because you got that in my head now. Iamaleava. Yes. Iamaleava.
I'm going to go with Iamaleava.
You've got it stuck in my head now to where I couldn't even say it right.
I mean, it's perfect.
It is. It seems like the people who are surrounding him, including his own father, sadly, are giving him bad advice. And from all the reports that are coming out of what Tennessee is saying, it even got past his dad and Nico, where Nico wasn't even privy to some of these conversations, and the agents started taking over. So that's the thing that's always concerned me about NIL is opportunists and people who would be taking advantage of these young players. And this is a big case of that, I think. I know that Nico still probably had to have a say in all this, so I'm not excusing him. He's an adult at the end of the day, but it seems like he's getting some really bad advice from people that he thought he should trust.
And it's really interesting there's a great athletic article with a ton of quotes from unnamed sources, but people that other coaches, other general managers from other college teams, and nobody seems to think that he's going to get that $4 million. It seems like he
can't go in the SEC, by the way.
Right,
so for the people on how that works, he can't go to any SEC team. So we're assuming a West Coast team is where he would be going.
Right. And USC has already apparently said that they aren't.
Oregon?
That was the first team he called, and they said, no, we don't have any interest. So it looks like UCLA or Notre Dame.
Or an even smaller school, possibly, where he's not going to get that $4 million that he was demanding from Tennessee. And Tennessee has one of the best NIL funds in all of the nation. Yeah. Why would you play games with them?
That bastion of moral fortitude, Notre Dame.
Yeah, there you go. They got money.
They do. They do have money. But Tennessee has a lot of money, too.
Confused.
Yeah. So I'm just really intrigued by how much he gets and what happens. Because there's so much that goes into this. Next year, you have, if they ever do settle the House case, you're going to have a salary cap for all of your players. And you're also going to have most teams, if not every team, have their quarterback situation already settled. So do you want to pay this guy for a year in which he's probably not going to play at least the first half of the season for you?
And also, I think he lost a lot of fans in that Arkansas game. Just being honest, that was a game that Tennessee should have won, and they lost to Arkansas. He lost a lot of fans in that aspect. Is he a good quarterback? Yes. He was a 5-star. We always get enamored with these 5-star recruits, and a lot of times it does pan out. But I don't think he had even proven himself fully yet for the $4 million.
I think he was like the 10th best quarterback in the SEC last year.
Yeah, statistically. So it's just really sad because I think that he had the wrong people giving him advice. And it sounds like even his own father was one of those people who was involved in that process.
Yeah. And I do think probably that, and Eli may not say anything, but I think Eli's probably pretty happy about this because he does love to taunt Tennessee, doesn't he?
He does. Well, him and Heupel have a pretty good relationship. Even remember during the stadium renderings that they put out, they put that Tennessee score up there on the scoreboard and the in the renderings. I feel like Tennessee and Mizzou need to play every single year because that's like a new budding rivalry.
I agree.
I think it is. I think that Eli really likes that rivalry a lot.
There's somebody in the chat who wants to essentially trade the Blues for an NBA team.
Huh?
And no one in the chat is okay with him. And
Deep voice,
I understand that you can't verbalize that opinion here in St. Louis. You'd be a fool to verbalize that opinion in St. Louis. And that's why I'm going to stop talking now.
That's just not a play that you make. If you can add to the Blues, that'd be great. But I don't think that you give up. I mean,
why
a traditional franchise that you've had for 58 years? Why would you give it up? Why not just get the NBA team and keep both?
Yeah,
the Hawks can fly again.
Get both.
So this is another interesting thing too about the whole saga with Nico is that I sent this to you guys this weekend. I'm sure that you have seen this make the rounds on social media too, but every 5-star quarterback in the class of 2023 has transferred except for Arch Manning. Wow. Arch Manning is sticking obviously with Texas. There's a lot of people who are like, oh man, what a stand-up guy. It's because he has generational wealth. And so he doesn't have a bunch of people who are trying to take advantage of him. Yep. He has a litany of people that he can rely on who could tell him the correct way to go about this. A lot of these other players don't. They when money gets involved, greed gets involved, and they're getting bad advice, is my opinion.
Add to that, and that's the biggest factor, but he's playing for a coach that was an offensive coordinator in the NFL. He's got great receivers and great talent around him. He's got a good offensive line. He has a chance to win. He's probably not going to get hurt. And he understands, I think that family probably understands the dynamic of big-time college football better than any other family.
Literally, yeah. So he has a lot of great advice that he can lean on there. And that's kind of the difference, right? Is that a lot of these other young players that we're seeing enter the transfer portal, sometimes it does work out for them. I don't have an issue with it, but this whole thing with NIL, I feel more bad for Nico than anything because I think he's just getting poor advice from people around him.
Right. I agree with you.
And they're trying to take advantage of the money situation.
And here are a couple of quotes. Speaking of the money situation, a couple of quotes from that Athletic article. This is from an NIL collective leader, somebody who is running a collective for a big-time college football program. Said, I wouldn't be paying more than $1 million to $1.5 million. He said, he'll probably get $3 million plus, though. Tough timing. Got to imagine most schools have spent their budgets. That's a really good point. And they refer to the $20.5 million cap on revenue that schools can share with athletes starting this year. A group of 5 general managers said, hope it was worth it. Would have a tough time imagining someone is going to pay that much to replace the guy they already have slated to start this year. Think about Mizzou. And Iamaleava might be better than Bo Prabula, but the Tigers have already spent their $2.5 million on Bo Prabula.
Exactly.
They aren't going to give another guy.
People are starting their spring games. Like they're already trying to get everything set for the season. And that was another thing that I saw in some of the articles too, is that apparently his agent and dad and Nico weren't happy with maybe some of the players that Heupel brought in and thought that he could have done more with the roster. It's like, so then you're also making demands about the people around you on top of that. Like, why would you think that that's a good idea whatsoever? Like, who are you?
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, that's the thing is like, who are you? And I'm glad that Heupel took a stand to that and said, look, we're not going to deal with this. We're going to move on. If you want to go search elsewhere, what I would be interested in, if there's any sort of, which I mean, tampering in this day and age, like seems like nothing. But if there's any sort of tampering, because if his agent didn't have a backup plan already,
that'd be really bad.
Then what in the world is he doing? So you
Right.
go in there with demands and you didn't have any sort of backup plan. I would
Yeah, you
assume
better.
that there's a backup
Yeah.
plan.
But in listening to these quotes, you wonder, and maybe somebody will decide, you know what, because this happens too. We might have offered him this while he was still under contract to Tennessee, but now that he's out there, nobody else wants to pay him. We're not going to give him that.
Yeah.
We're not going to give him what we said we were going to give him. This is one Power 4 personnel director. He said, I pay him $500,000 with big incentives, but he will get more than he deserves. And then a Power 4 general manager, this will be the last quote. He said, I think he's right around what Tennessee's paying him, possibly even less, maybe $1.5 million to $2 million. Nico just isn't amazing. There's a bunch of quarterbacks that are better than Nico.
No,
So
but he still has that little 5-star tag that
He
goes
does.
along with him.
Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to see where he lands. I think this is a really fun college football story.
Is there anything that, after seeing this whole situation, and I feel like this will be the first of many, honestly, that we'll see in this NIL era, is there anything that can be done to fix this?
The one thing that I've always thought, and the people that I talk, and I only talk to Mizzou and Lindenwood people, but when I bring up the idea of signing players to 3-year contracts, they say that just won't work because then the players will be employees. Well, with the house settlement, they're going to be employees anyway. So I think that's the one thing. And maybe have the players unionize, but sign them to 3-year contracts.
And then it's binding,
Binding.
like binding contracts.
Yeah. So
do they need to also have a players association?
yeah, definitely. They need to unionize.
They
Absolutely.
need that.
Yep. Hey, did you know that the Battlehawks took it on the chin yesterday to the DC Defenders, to our old friend Jordan Teamu? The final score was 27-15, but we were awarded the UFL championship this summer in June. So that'll be fun.
That'll be exciting.
Another opportunity. Hopefully we'll be in the game and we'll be able to win it this year. But thanks to the UFL, Russ Brandon, Danny Garcia, for announcing yesterday at halftime of the game against DC that we will host the championship again. We got plenty of time left for the season, though, and you need to be sure that you catch Battlehawks Hub Weekly, now available on Sports Hub STL's YouTube page, with Luke Slaybaugh and Judy Strotter as they get you set for the season. Battlehawks coverage on Sports Hub STL is presented by Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken. That was another thing I was going to do yesterday, and the Masters pulled me away from it. I was going to go to Lee's and get the Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken Battlehawks box. You can score up to 30% off Battlehawks tickets, plus get 4 of their famous breast strips and a side of potato wedges for just $8.99, only at Lee's, famous for chicken. Doesn't that just look delicious? Don't you want to have that?
So good.
Ooh, I got to get there. There's one in St. Anne and one in St. Charles. I know I'm going to get there. I just don't know when, but I'm going to enjoy.
Well, you don't have the Masters holding you back anymore.
Yeah. No, Battlehawks box, just $8.99. And yeah, don't use the Masters as an excuse anymore. Any closing thoughts from Brooke or Matthew?
No.
Okay.
That's about it. Now
Good.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
We always talk about food at least once on this show. That's like a requirement. We don't put it in the rundown, but it happens anyways.
Happens all the time, yeah.
It was another loss for City.
Oh, yeah. But we scored a goal.
Does that really matter if you lose 2-1?
Well,
it should have been a
for that
2-2
team.
tie, but the
yeah.
MLS for some reason can't, just doesn't have good technology when it comes to the scoreline stuff. And so for some reason, despite the fact that there's a pretty sure that Klaus was onside, they ruled him offsides, and then they didn't go to in-stadium VAR because the ruling on the field was that he was offsides instead of doing what they should do. Like the NFL figured it out. Don't call the fumble. Or call the fumble on the field. We'll get to whether or not his knee was down after the fact, and the defense scored the touchdown. We're going to give the defense the touchdown. We're not going to take away the big moments that are fun. Instead, the MLS blows it. Although, in fairness, the referee blew it because the MLS has actually been trying to emphasize: do not make the call on the field. Let it happen, and then
like the NFL does.
And then we'll make the call, which is the correct way to do it. Instead, immediate flag goes up on the field. So now we get to the point where there has to be enough evidence that the MLS deems that there is enough question as to whether or not it was a correct call to go to VAR. They deem, based on the pool report, because the pool report is not a good response, they deem that simply there wasn't enough angles to determine whether or not there was enough question to go to a review. And they don't go to a review, and everything you look at tells me there was enough question to go there and actually see a better angle to see if Klaus was offsides or not. And because of that, they don't go to the review, and City loses all 3 points.
Forgive me for my ignorance, but does MLS have a challenge system?
They have a VAR, which is video assistant referee, that they can go to. And so it's essentially, it's not an official challenge system from the coaches. It's all back in New York. They're determining whether or not they should go to it. But again, the way that the rules go, and Olaf Melberg talked about this in the postgame, if the call on the field, like the NFL, the call on the field kind of then dictates what like the burden of proof is. And if it's too close, you have to stick with the call on the field instead of sending it to review. They didn't send it to review. City goes down 2-1. But Klaus getting a goal was obviously important. It was actually really funny. I was telling Randy this. Rory won the Masters and Klaus scored his goal almost at the exact same moment. And so at the exact same moment, my Twitter explodes with people saying, redemption, he's finally done it. I can't, the weight off his shoulders. He's been waiting so long for this. And I, of course, am thinking, wow, man, there's all these Klaus fans just so happy for our Brazilian finally getting the goal. It's been almost a whole calendar year since he scored his last one. He's finally breaking through. And then I go, oh, okay, Rory won the Masters. But still, it was, not joking, it wasn't a huge moment for Klaus. The guy has struggled so many times. He's missed so many chances. He literally scored his last goal, fought through an injury, came back, played well, and then wasn't able to score for the last, I think, 20 matches essentially on the bounce since he returned from his injury. So incredible goal for him. Almost got the second one that got taken away. That was also kind of the bigger thing with it getting taken away, is that it was another Klaus goal. So he could have gone from literally not scoring for a year to having a brace in one night and tying the best team in the MLS. That would have been big.
That would have been great. So, well, bummer. Hopefully they can get back in the win column. One other thing for you guys, by the way, and this I did this yesterday. When you guys are ever, like if you're watching a sporting event at home by yourself, nobody else in the room, do you ever react like I did yesterday when Rory missed the 5-foot putt at 18 to send the match, the tournament, to an extra hole? I go, oh! So I grabbed my head in my hands and I was all by myself. Do you guys ever do that while you're by yourself?
Yeah. Are you saying like you need people around to do that, to be able to have like the theatrics, so then you could all feed off each other?
I was so emotionally invested.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know if other people did that too. I'm glad to know that they do.
I mean, you'll find when you are watching a game alone or with people, where you like notice like something will happen, you'll be like, I'm glad that there were no other humans who were able to hear the noise that I made with that moment. Like something happened, just like, it's like, oh God, I'm really glad no one else heard me do that.
I remember this so vividly.
Austin does that on the air all the time. I'm looking for it.
When Albert hit the home run in Houston, I literally jumped up out of my chair. Literally, I was sitting in the chair. Literally jumped up out of, and my hands hit the ceiling.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
The one time I've jumped into a ceiling fan, like my head hit the blades. David Tyree.
Oh yeah,
I'm awesome. Standing in the middle of a living room watching the Patriots and Giants. Tyree makes the catch, and I'm so happy because I hated the Patriots so much.
Too.
And now with them to go 17-0, I jump in the air and just rack my head to a moving fan.
Yep. Matthew, I was wearing my brand new Giants T-shirt and cap that day.
Oh my God!
I was, and I wasn't as much Giants fan. I just wanted them to beat the Patriots so badly, and they did.
And part of it wasn't just the Rams factor for me. I was also really mad about that team because I'm a diehard Jerry Rice fan. And so Randy Moss breaking the record also kind of had me a little bit miffed too.
And they cheated.
Yeah,
they cheated. Hey, great to have you with us today on the Randy Karraker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley with Matthew Rocchio. We appreciate you being with us on a Monday. It is a Monday.
It is Monday.
And for all of us, have a magnificent Monday, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 10:02.